There is something most people never question. They believe being good means always giving. Giving time. Giving attention. Giving energy. Saying yes. Showing up. Being available. And on the surface, it looks right. It feels right. Because you are helping. You are being kind. You are being reliable. But there is a quiet consequence that no one talks about. The more you give without awareness, the less control you have over your own life. Not immediately. Not dramatically. But slowly. So slowly that you barely notice it happening. You start your day with intentions. Plans. Priorities. But by the end of the day, you've spent your time reacting to everyone else. Answering requests. Handling distractions. Carrying responsibilities that were never yours. And at some point, you begin to feel it. A quiet frustration. Not directed at others, but at yourself. Because deep down, you know you allowed it. You said yes. You gave access. You made space for it. This is where most people misunderstand Stoicism. They think it teaches detachment, coldness, distance. But it does not. It teaches control. Control over what you allow. And what you do not. Thinkers like Marcus Aurelius understood something deeply practical. You are responsible for your mind. Not for everyone else's expectations. And once you start giving away the wrong things, you lose that responsibility. You become reactive instead of intentional. And when you live reactively, you do not build your life. You respond to it. That is the difference. So the goal is not to stop giving. The goal is to stop giving what should never be given. Because some things, once given away repeatedly, cannot be easily recovered. They shape your identity, your habits, your direction. And if you are not careful, they shape your entire life. So before you say yes again, you need to understand something clearly. Not everything people ask for deserves to be given. And once you understand what to protect, everything changes. If this is already making you rethink how you use your time, subscribe to this channel to get more of this. Because learning what to protect is how you take control of your life. 1. Your time. Time feels unlimited. Until you realize it is not. Most people move through their day as if there will always be more of it. More hours. More opportunities. More chances to do what matters. So they give it away easily. A few minutes here. An hour there. A small favor. And each one feels insignificant. Too small to matter. But time does not disappear in large moments. It disappears in small ones. Repeated daily. You agree to something you didn't plan. You respond to something unnecessary. You delay something important. And those small decisions stack. Until one day, you look back and realize you have been busy, but not productive. Active, but not intentional. And that realization is uncomfortable. Because you cannot get that time back. The Stoic mindset approaches time differently. It does not treat time casually. It treats it as a finite resource. Something that must be protected. Because every moment you give away is a moment you cannot reclaim. This is why awareness matters. Before you say yes, you pause. You ask yourself something simple. Is this worth my time? Not. Can I do it? Not. Will they be upset if I don't? But. Is this worth a piece of my life? Because that is what time is. A piece of your life. And once you start seeing it that way, your decisions change. You become more selective. Not rude. Not distant. But intentional. You understand that saying yes to everything means saying no to yourself. And that is a trade most people make unconsciously. They prioritize others' requests over their own direction. And over time, they lose clarity. Because their time is fragmented. Scattered across too many demands. Too many distractions. Too many things that do not matter. The Stoic approach restores focus. You decide what matters first. Your priorities. Your goals. Your direction. And then, everything else is evaluated against that. If it aligns, you give your time. If it does not, you decline. Not emotionally. Not defensively. But clearly. Because clarity removes guilt. You are not rejecting people. You are protecting your time. And that distinction matters. At first, this feels uncomfortable. Because you are used to saying yes. Used to being available. Used to being flexible. But flexibility without boundaries leads to loss of control. And control is what allows you to build something meaningful. So you practice small decisions. Saying no when necessary. Protecting your schedule. Creating space for what matters. And over time, something shifts. You feel less rushed. Less scattered. More focused. Because your time is no longer being pulled in every direction. It is directed by you. This is not about becoming unavailable. It is about becoming intentional. Because intentional time creates progress. And progress creates fulfillment. Most people want better results. But they do not protect the one thing required to achieve them. Time. So they stay busy. But unchanged. And that is the cost of giving time away without awareness. 2. Your energy. There is something even more valuable than time. Your energy. Because time without energy feels heavy. You can have hours available. But if your mind is tired, if your emotions are drained, if your focus is weak, those hours become useless. You sit down to work. But your mind wanders. You try to concentrate. But everything feels difficult. You feel slow. Distracted. Disconnected. And you wonder why. But the answer is usually simple. You gave your energy away. Not all at once. But in small interactions. Small conversations. Small obligations. Small distractions. Each one took a little from you. And by the time you needed that energy, it was already gone. Most people only think about physical energy. Sleep. Food. Rest. But mental and emotional energy matter just as much. And they are often drained more quickly. Because they are constantly being pulled. Someone wants your attention. Someone wants your help. Someone wants your response. And each time you engage, you give a piece of your energy. Even if it feels small. Even if it feels harmless. Because energy does not disappear dramatically. It fades gradually. Until you feel it all at once. The Stoic mindset becomes aware of this early. It recognizes that energy must be managed. Not just restored. Because if you only focus on recovery, but never on protection, you will always feel drained. So you begin to ask a different question. Not, do I have time for this? But, do I have the energy for this? And that question changes everything. Because some things cost more than time. They cost focus. They cost emotional stability. They cost mental clarity. And once you spend those, they are not easily replaced. This is why certain people feel exhausting. Not because they are doing something extreme, but because they require constant energy, constant attention, constant engagement. And if you do not set limits, they will take more than you realize. The Stoic approach is not to avoid people completely. It is to engage with awareness. You choose when to engage. You choose how much to give. And most importantly, you choose when to step back. Because stepping back is not weakness. It is discipline. It is understanding that your energy has limits. And respecting those limits. At first, this feels uncomfortable. Because you are used to being available. Used to responding quickly. Used to being present for everything. But being present for everything means you are not fully present for anything. Your energy becomes divided. Scattered. And when it is scattered, it loses strength. But when you protect it, it becomes focused. Stronger. More effective. You begin to notice something powerful. When you give your energy intentionally, your interactions improve. Your focus sharpens. Your work becomes deeper. Your thoughts become clearer. Because you are no longer operating from exhaustion. You are operating from control. And control changes everything. You no longer feel overwhelmed easily. Because you are not overextending yourself. You are choosing where your energy goes. And that choice creates stability. Not perfect balance, but intentional direction. And intentional direction leads to a calmer mind. Because your energy is no longer being pulled in every direction. It is guided by you. Because protecting your energy is how you protect your focus. 3. Your peace of mind. Peace of mind is not something you find. It is something you protect. Most people think peace comes from external conditions. When everything is stable. When everything goes as planned. When nothing disturbs them. But that kind of peace does not last. Because the world is unpredictable. People are unpredictable. Situations change. And if your peace depends on those things, it will always be fragile. Easily disrupted. The Stoic mindset understands something different. Peace is internal. But it can be disturbed. If you allow the wrong things in. And this is where most people lose it. Not in one moment. But in repeated exposure. Conversations that lead nowhere. Arguments that do not matter. Opinions that do not affect your life. And yet, you engage. You respond. You react. You absorb it. And once it enters your mind, it stays. You think about it later. Replay it. Analyze it. And suddenly, something that did not matter is now affecting your peace. This is how overthinking is triggered. Not by major events, but by unnecessary engagement. The Stoic approach is simple. You become selective. Not everything deserves your attention. Not everything deserves your response. And once you understand that, you begin to withdraw from unnecessary conflict. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. You recognize that your peace is more valuable than being right. More valuable than proving a point. More valuable than winning an argument that does not change your life. So you let things go. Not because you cannot respond, but because you choose not to. And that choice protects your mind. Because every argument avoided is mental energy saved. Every unnecessary reaction avoided is peace preserved. This does not mean you ignore everything. It means you choose carefully. You engage when it matters. You disengage when it does not. And over time, This becomes natural. You no longer feel the need to respond to everything. You no longer feel pulled into every situation. Because you understand something most people miss. Attention is a gateway. Whatever you give attention to enters your mind. And once it enters your mind, it affects your state. So you guard that gateway. You decide what gets in and what stays out. This is how peace is maintained. Not by controlling the world, but by controlling what you allow into your mind. And once you do this consistently, something changes. Your mind becomes quieter. Not empty, but stable. Less reactive. Less disturbed. And that stability creates clarity. Because your thoughts are no longer crowded. They are not competing with unnecessary noise. They are focused. Directed. And that is where real peace exists. Not in silence, but in control. If your mind feels constantly disturbed, this is what needs to change. Subscribe to this channel to get more of this. Because protecting your peace is protecting your mind. 4. Your values. There will be moments in your life when people will not ask directly for your values. They will not say, "Give me your standards." Instead, they will ask for something smaller. Something subtle. Something that seems harmless. A small compromise. A small adjustment. A moment where you act slightly outside what you believe is right. And it will feel insignificant. Just this once. Just for this situation. But that is how it begins. Values are not lost in one decision. They are weakened through repetition. Each small compromise makes the next one easier. Until eventually, you are no longer acting based on what you believe. You are reacting based on pressure, expectations, situations. And when that happens, you lose direction. Because your values are your direction. They guide your decisions. They shape your actions. They define your character. Without them, you become influenced by everything around you. The Stoic mindset does not allow this. It holds values with clarity. Not aggressively. Not loudly. But consistently. You know what you stand for. And more importantly, you act according to it. Even when it is uncomfortable. Even when it would be easier to adjust. Because you understand something deeply important. Every time you act against your values, you weaken your self-trust. And self-trust is everything. It is the foundation of confidence. Because confidence is not built by success. It is built by consistency. Consistency between what you believe and how you act. When those align, you feel strong, stable, clear. But when they do not, something feels off. Even if everything looks fine externally. Because internally, you know you did not act in alignment. And that awareness creates tension. The Stoic approach removes that tension. By refusing to compromise unnecessarily. You do not adjust your values to fit situations. You adjust your actions to match your values. And that requires discipline. Because there will always be pressure. Pressure to fit in. Pressure to agree. Pressure to avoid conflict. But every time you resist that pressure, you strengthen your identity. You reinforce who you are. And that reinforcement builds stability. Not emotional stability alone, but directional stability. You know where you stand. And that clarity removes confusion. Because you no longer have to decide who to be in each situation. You already know. And that makes life simpler. Not easier, but clearer. And clarity reduces overthinking. Because many people overthink. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack clear values. So they hesitate. They question. They second-guess. But when your values are clear, decisions become faster, stronger, more certain. Because they are guided, not random. And that is the power of protecting your values. Because strong values create a strong life. 5. Your self-respect. Everything you give away leads here. Your self-respect. Because self-respect is not something you say. It is something you demonstrate. Through your actions. Through your decisions. Through what you allow. And what you refuse. If you give away your time carelessly, your energy constantly, your peace easily, your values repeatedly, there is only one result. You begin to lose respect for yourself. Not instantly, but gradually. In small moments. Moments where you said yes, when you meant no. Moments where you stayed silent, when you should have spoken. Moments where you accepted less than what you knew was right. And each of those moments leaves a mark. Not visible externally, but deeply felt internally. You begin to feel uncertain, less confident, less grounded. Because confidence is not created by external success. It is created by internal alignment. When you act in alignment with yourself, you trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, confidence follows naturally. But when you repeatedly go against yourself, that trust breaks. And without trust, everything becomes harder. Decisions feel heavier. Boundaries feel uncomfortable. You hesitate more. You doubt more. And over time, you become reactive instead of intentional. The Stoic mindset rebuilds this from the ground up. Not with affirmations. Not with motivation. But with action. You begin to set boundaries. Small at first. You say no when necessary. You step away when needed. You act according to your values. Even when it feels uncomfortable. And slowly, something changes. You begin to trust yourself again. Because you see your actions matching your decisions. And that consistency rebuilds respect. Not external respect. Internal respect. The kind that does not depend on approval. The kind that remains stable. Even when others disagree. And once you have that, everything else changes. You no longer feel the need to please everyone. You no longer feel pressured to explain every decision. You no longer feel pulled in every direction. Because you are grounded. Grounded in your own standards. Your own boundaries. Your own direction. And that grounding creates strength. Not loud strength. But quiet certainty. The kind that does not need validation. The kind that does not give itself away easily. Because you understand something clearly. Not everything that is asked of you deserves to be given. And protecting that protects you. Because self-respect is built through what you refuse to give away. If you've made it this far, then something in you is already shifting. Not everything, but enough. Enough to see your life differently. Enough to recognize the patterns. Enough to begin changing them. Most people never reach this point. They continue giving. Without thinking. Without questioning. Without realizing what it is costing them. And over time, they feel it. The exhaustion. The frustration. The quiet sense that something is missing. But they do not know why. Because they never learned what to protect. But now you have. You understand that not everything should be given away. Not your time. Not your energy. Not your peace. Not your values. Not your self-respect. And once you understand that, you begin to live differently. More intentionally. More clearly. More in control. This is not about becoming distant. It is not about rejecting people. It is about respecting yourself enough to choose carefully. Because every decision you make shapes your life. Every yes, every no, builds your direction. So moving forward, pause before you give. Think before you agree. And decide consciously. Because what you give away, you may not get back. But what you protect, you strengthen. And what you strengthen defines who you become. If this changed the way you see your life, then don't stop here. Subscribe to this channel to get more of this. Because self-mastery is not built in one moment. It is built through repeated awareness. Repeated discipline. Repeated choice. And if you continue on this path, you will notice something powerful. You feel calmer. Stronger. More in control. Not because life became easier, but because you became clearer. And clarity changes everything. So start now. Not perfectly, but intentionally. And watch how your life begins to shift.